In this video, I'm going to talk about the best agentic code editor I've ever used. Hi, I'm Ed Zynda, and this is What the Funk. So it's only been a few years since GitHub came out with Copilot, which was a super huge breakthrough for us programmers because we realized that LLMs were good at not only just generating essays, blog posts, and poems, but it could actually code. And so when Microsoft and GitHub released Copilot, which basically is like autocomplete on steroids in VS Code, and I think there were plugins for Vim as well. Like you could code a hell of a lot faster than you could before. Autocomplete was cool, but like this kind of tab and accept feature were basically predicting what you wanted to type next or what should come next was awesome. Fast forward a few years later and people realized that just tabbing and completing isn't the best way to generate code. Maybe it's better to be able to talk a little bit more to your LLM or AI agent and describe what you want and then have it generate code that way. So that's where tools like Aider came in. And I used to use Aider for quite a while once I learned about it, mostly because I could have Vim opened up in the terminal. I use Vim, by the way. And then I have another pane open with Aider. And basically I can write my code. And then if there's something very boilerplatey or something kind of complex I don't really know how to do right away, I could just go into Aider and fire up an instance and basically type in a little chat message saying, hey, I need to implement this feature. Please have a look at this file and this file. And I've also got like this MD file or markdown file full of some other instructions or some documentation. And could you please just implement this part for me? And Aider would just be able to take all the different pieces, send it up to the LLM, and the LLM could say, hey, we need to edit this file at this line, this file at this line, and Aider would do all that for me. And that was amazing. It was even more amazing once Claude came out with their Sonnet 3.5 model because it was really good at coding and it worked very well with tools like Aider. A little while later, Claude 3.7 came out and then Anthropic introduced Claude Code, which is another terminal-based tool just like Aider, but a little bit more agentic, whereas Aider gave you a little bit more control, like you had to specify which files were up for editing, which files were read-only, and you had to instruct Aider where to look for certain things. Claude Code gives a little bit more power to the agent or the LLM, and all you had to do was describe what you want, and if Claude Code has been opened inside a specific repo or directory, it could go ahead and find what it needs inside that directory, read files, run commands, and just look its way around your repo, figure out what it needs to do, and then do all those things without much intervention from you. Of course, there are some security considerations, so it can't just write things willy-nilly. It comes up with a little prompt that says, hey, can I edit this? Or hey, can I run this command? But you can also switch on something like YOLO mode and allow it to just do whatever the hell it wants to do. And you just hope for the best and hope that you end up with something usable. Now, I've only just mentioned a few terminal-based agentic code tools. Of course, everybody knows about the desktop or IDE-based coding tools like Cursor or Windsurf. But myself, being a Vim user and loving being in the terminal, I just stick to these different terminal tools. And I've never really had a need for something as bloated as Cursor or Windsurf. For a while, I was using Claude Code quite a bit because it was amazing and it works amazing. It still works amazing. The only problem I have with Claude Code is the vendor lock-in. Right now, Sonnet 3.7 is one of the best models for coding out there, but that's not always going to be the case. And it would be nice to have the same power or the same features as Claude Code and be able to use whatever model I choose. So that's where I stumbled upon a project called opencode. Now, opencode is very similar to Claude Code, except that the one big thing is that it's open source. So you can actually go in, read what's happening in the source code. You can fork it yourself, create your own version, or what I've been doing recently is contributing. If I find that there is a feature that I really liked in Claude Code, for example, and it hadn't been implemented in this project, I just went ahead and created a pull request for this. And the great thing is the maintainers are very proactive. They're very fast at looking at pull requests and merging them. And I think their entire goal is to make one of the best terminal-based agentic editors around and make it completely open and independent. Now, the project was actually started by one person. I don't know how long ago, maybe a few months ago. And when it was released to the public, I started using it almost immediately. But only after a week or so, there was a little bit of drama. I didn't really get into it, but apparently the owner was looking to try and sell the project to somebody, even though it was open source. A few of the other maintainers, namely Dax, you might know him. He's very active on X/Twitter, and he's also the creator of SST, which is a very cool TypeScript library for orchestrating infrastructure in AWS and other cloud platforms. He and another guy, Adam.dev, forked the same repo, and now they're maintaining it under the SST organization on GitHub. So I've started moving all of my contributions to that repo. Basically, their whole goal is to keep this open. They're not going to try and sell it to somebody. They're not going to try and take all of the hard work from the community and just give it away and sell out and run away with the money. That's what I like about this project. The other thing I like about this project is that it's written in Go, which is, let's be honest, one of the most goated languages around. And it's using the Charm Bubble Tea framework, which is one of the most beautiful terminal user interface libraries around. So we can just go ahead and go through some of the features here. So yeah, it's got an interactive terminal user interface built with Bubble Tea. It works with multiple providers, like I was mentioning before. Claude Code only works with Anthropic models, but here you can use OpenAI, Anthropic, Google Gemini, Grok, and a few others. Got session management tool. It works with MCPs, which is the hot new thing right now. It keeps track of everything in an SQLite database. One other cool feature that it has is that it integrates with Language Server Protocol, or LSPs. So if you are familiar with VS Code or Vim, a lot of the autocomplete and a lot of the helpful diagnostics you get when you're editing code, where if you type something and there's a syntax error and you see some highlighting or some recommendations, that's what LSP is. It's a server that's running in the background that's basically scanning your code files for any types of errors, any type of formatting problems. Here, they've integrated it into the editor, and it works as a tool in the background. So as you're editing, as the AI agent is editing files, it can actually talk to this tool and say, hey, was the code I just added or the code I just put into this file, is there something wrong with it? And it'll give immediate feedback to the LLM, and the LLM can be like, whoops, I made a mistake. I left out a semicolon or a bracket, and just go ahead and fix that mistake. And that in itself keeps the AI agent from generating code that's just not going to work. And one of the problems with agentic coding, or vibe coding, as some of the kids are calling it, is that the LLM is going to generate a bunch of code that it thinks is correct, but then you're going to get something every once in a while that's not actually correct, or there's some sort of syntax error, and then the AI agent has no idea what it did wrong, or you may not have any idea what went wrong, and you're just going to go into a spiral of death trying to debug like some super small error. This LSP integration keeps everything within some guardrails and keeps your coding experience a little bit more smooth. But yeah, that's some of the main features, and the documentation that just tells you how to install it, how to configure it. But instead of going through all this individually, I'm just going to open it up in a terminal and show you how it works. So here I have opencode opened in my terminal. We can go ahead and just open up the help menu real quick. So we've got things like viewing logs. We can quit. We've just toggled the help like this. Opencode does keep track of different sessions. If you're doing different things and you want to go back to another session, you can do that. We have this thing called commands. I'll show you that in a little bit. We can upload different files, change our model, change our theme, create new sessions, and a bunch of other stuff. So let's close out of this help. Let me show you what it looks like to, let's change our theme, for example. So right now I've got Monokai. Let's do Tokyo Night, which is a cool theme. Opencode has its own theme. And yeah, let's just go back to Tokyo Night. I like that. We have this other thing called commands. So there are a few built-in commands already, maybe some more to come in the future. So we have this initialize project, which basically creates a file called context.md, and it works like your cursor rules if you use cursor, or the claude.md if you use Claude Code. So it just makes a bunch of notes about the repo you're working on, things to remember. So whenever it's generating code, you can be like, always do file names in snake case and lowercase, and it, like, the LLM should remember these kinds of things. These are the kinds of things you would put in your context.md. So this initialize will actually scan your code from the very beginning and create some rules that it already figured out about your repo. And then there's this compact conversation. This is another thing that is basically the same as in Claude Code. When you're running out of context with these models, I think Claude Sonnet has 200,000 tokens worth of a context window. So when you're doing a bunch of coding, all of this message history adds up and like starts eating away at the amount of tokens that the model can work with. So once you start reaching that level, you're going to either need to start a new session, or if you want to keep working basically on the same thread or the same feature, you want to summarize what you've already gone through before so you can continue the conversation without having to reprime the model on what you're actually doing. Opencode also has a auto compact feature, so it'll automatically do this once it sees that it's getting close to the limit of the context for this model. And then we have these user-defined commands, and I'll just open this one up for you real quick just so you can see what it is. You can define, basically you can create these markdown files with prompts and some placeholders as reusable commands that you can use within opencode without having to type a bunch of stuff. So I have this user:new work tree. Let's see what it is. So basically the only argument I've had put in here is this branch name, and we'll just say foo, and then I'll do enter, and then you can see what happens. After I put enter, you can see this is the message that was sent to opencode. I just replaced a bunch of placeholders with the word foo. So I'm telling the LLM, check if foo exists, meaning a branch. Maybe I could be more specific with this, to be honest. But I'm telling it to create a new work tree. If you don't understand what a work tree is, Git allows you to use something called work trees, which are a way to pull down different branches, but in a separate directory from the directory that you're in. And it still has a connection to the parent directory. And it's a cool way to allow you to work on different branches at the same time when you're working with a Git repo, rather than having to save and stash your changes and then pull a different branch. This allows you to have like multiple open branches at the same time. And I've only recently started using it, and I've found it pretty useful, especially now that I'm doing a lot of agentic coding. I'm doing a lot of stuff really fast, and I'm able to do a bunch of stuff simultaneously using this Git work tree method. But anyway, in the prompt, I'm telling the LLM to create a new Git work tree in the parent directory, in the work trees directory, under foo, which is what I entered into the input there, and then check out a branch. If the branch doesn't exist, you can use the -b command and it'll create the branch. And then, because when you're checking out through Git work tree, it doesn't copy everything you may or may not need. For example, if you've got a .env or a .envrc file, if you're using dir-env like I do, you're going to want to copy those over into your new work tree. And then there's also this opencode directory. If you're using opencode, all of the session and other stuff is stored in that directory. So if you want to use all the same opencode goodness without having to you're going to want to copy that over as well. Actually, in this case, I'm just creating a symbolic link so I don't copy a bunch of SQLite files all over the place. So this is actually working for me just fine. So the agent knows what to do because it has a list of tools for how to do it. More specifically, it has this bash tool to run the git command, and it's just asking me, do you want me to do this? I don't really want to check out a brand new branch called foo and create a new work tree. So I'm just going to deny this for now, but I'm going to open up the markdown file that I created that makes this all possible. So here I've got this new worktree.md file, and as you can see, it's literally just a prompt. And then you can add these placeholders with a $sign. So this branch name is the placeholder. And so I've placed this in my home directory .opencode/commands, which makes this a user level command. You can also do project level commands. So say these commands only apply to the current project. That .opencode directory that was in the project that I just mentioned earlier, you could put a commands directory there and save a bunch of MD files just like this, and then they'll be prefixed with project. But this is helpful if you have a lot of boilerplate stuff or a lot of different workflows that you do all the time and you want to save some time. You can literally just describe what you want to do, and it shows up in the command palette in opencode, and the agent will do it for you because it has all the tools to do it. It's smart enough to do it using tool calls, and this saves quite a lot of time. Another cool feature is if you hit Control F, you can scroll through your directory and choose things like images. Models like Claude 3.7 Sonnet accept images, and so you can add these images as an attachment. So I've got this screenshot from another CLI tool. I'm going to add that, and then I'm going to ask Claude, what does the image actually say? So the image was actually of a help screen for some CLI tool I had created called Titan Fury. And yeah, it picked up all the different text, the image. So it works exactly the same as if you're using Claude Desktop and you're dragging an image file into Claude Desktop. So it can do the same thing through the terminal. Another cool feature is if I hit /, we can do fuzzy finding of the different files. So say, for example, I want to work with a file called commands.go. I can just search for that and select that, and then yada, 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 say, hey, do something with this file. So I don't actually have to type in the entire path when I want to reference that file. Of course, it has access to MCP servers that you can configure in the config file. So I have a Firecrawl MCP server set up, and I can just say something like Firecrawl and then the opencode website, and then tell me what this repo is for. So the agent will know that, hey, I have a Firecrawl tool. It's going to ask me to allow using this scrape tool. I say yes. It pulls it down into a markdown format so it's easier to read. And then it'll tell you, hey, this is for opencode. This is what it does. Another cool feature is we have access to logs. So we can see the actual messages that are being sent to our LLM and what kind of errors are going on when the LLM is requesting to use a tool, and then the actual results that are returned from the tool, etc. Now, let me go over one of the features that I'm actually very excited about, and that is the non-interactive mode. So let's open up the help here real quick just to show you what I'm talking about. We've got this flag called -p or prompt, and it basically allows you to invoke opencode in a non-interactive scriptable mode where you give it a specific prompt and it'll go ahead and do what it needs to do without any user input. I've created this demo to-do directory, and I'm going to try and hopefully succeed in having opencode generate a working application. So let's run opencode p, and then I'm going to have it create a to-do CLI application in Python using UV, because anything else is insane that can edit and delete to-dos. And yeah, let's just see what happens. Now it's going to go ahead and think, and when it's finally done, we should see a bunch of code in this directory that we can hopefully run. All right, it's finished, and let's see what it says. The to-do CLI application is now ready. Here's what I've created, yada, yada, yada. So let's go ahead and run using the instructions it just gave us. So let's do uv pip dot. All right, let's try uvn. I'm not a Pythonista, so I don't really know what I'm doing here. All right, it's installing everything, and it says I could just run to do, but I'm not sure. Let's see what's in here. Source, to do CLI, maybe run CLI. Ah, here we go. So it seems to be working. So let's go ahead, uv run CLI, add by more bread, and then let's list our to-do. All right, let's add another one, contribute to opencode list complete. I'm thinking it probably takes the ID, so let's do that. All right, very cool. So that actually worked, and I didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to approve anything. I just set the agent off to do its own thing, and it succeeded, thankfully, in this demo. But you can see how you could use this in a scriptable fashion. So you could actually put it into some sort of shell script, Python script, even a bun type script, and automate some of your monotonous or tedious workflows. Like, for example, I could take the custom command for creating a new work tree and just turning that into a script that I can just run in the terminal without having to open up the full opencode instance. And then I could just use this one-off script, save it in my global path, and then have an easy way to create work trees. If you're interested in a video on me creating some reusable development workflows using opencode's non-interactive mode, just go ahead and let me know in the comments below. And that's opencode. I've only covered a few of its features in this video. There's a bit more that it can actually do, and there are a lot more features that I plan to add and others plan to add. So in my mind, it's well on its way to be one of the best, if not the best, agentic code editors out there. Like I've said, I've been using it a lot lately. I encourage you to check it out for yourself. I plan to continue contributing features, fixing bugs as I find them, and it would be amazing to get a lot of other developers out there trying it and contributing as well. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure to smash that like button. If you have any comments or questions, leave them down below. Once again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.